To our study session, work session. Mayor will be joining us shortly, but we're certainly grateful and appreciative to have the library here. So we'll turn oh no, we've got to have a roll call, don't we? I'm sorry. Please go ahead, Ruth.
Okay. Adamson?
Here.
Gray?
Here.
Cheatham?
Here.
Lurick?
Here.
Johnston?
Here.
Manon?
Here.
Platt? Okay.
We'll ask the library to go ahead with their presentation and bring us up to date, please.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the council. My name is Sandy Shropshire. I'm the chair of the Marshall Public Library Advisory Board. I'm joined by Trina Bonham, Associate Director of the library. And we're happy to be here this morning to present to you the activities of the past year in terms of the library. Am I speaking loudly enough?
I hear you.
We can hear you fine.
Okay, thank you. I want to make a few key points this morning. The first is that the library is using the budget and the resources that you allow it to use wisely. You may be aware of the achievement this past year of the redo of the lighting in conjunction with Idaho Power that will ultimately reduce the power bill for the library and run more efficiently and produce less demand on our hydroelectric resources. They're also doing some maintenance on the exterior of the building from crumbling brick. I think perhaps the most important point I'd like to make is a demonstration of how the library is involved in the community of Pocatello. I list a number of activities and items that were engaged with this past year. As always, the book sales held both in the fall and the spring yielded a nice return that will go back into buying more resources for the library. That again is hosted by the Friends of the Library and not by the staff. The 50-50 reading challenge, in which adults are challenged to read 50 books in 50 weeks, had some modest participation, but the reports I've heard from those who participated thought it was a lot of fun. Did you?
Yeah, and that's last year's participation. It's looking like it'll almost double this year. So once people have heard about it, they come in and they're excited for it. So
I would report some success from me.
oh, good.
We went to the surplus book sale and bought several bags full. And I read 30 while I was in the hospital. I read 30 books that I got from the library. And some of them I've passed on to everybody but Bina's gotten one of my books. I don't know what to give Bina, things I read. But I want to tell you, that book sale is awesome. And I've got some notes on some other things I'm going to ask you, but thank you for all you're doing.
Toward the late fall and early winter, the Food for Fines program helped send items to the Idaho Food Bank. That is, if a patron has a library fine for being late in returning the book, they can cancel that fine by bringing in a can of food for the food bank, something like that. There were also some cool exhibits that you may recall. Some got coverage in the Idaho State Journal. The Chief Theater exhibit was very interesting, as well as the Edward Stevenson exhibit. You may recall that he was a costume designer for which studio?
I think RCA.
RCA.
And Lucille Ball,
And
personally.
particularly Lucille Ball. So that was a fun step back in time to see those exhibits.
That was a really good exhibit, and he was Trent Clegg,
Yes.
right? He presented on a paper on that at the Historic Preservation Conference too, and it was really a good one. I enjoyed that.
Edward Stevenson's childhood home was on the same block that the library. So there was the original library, the Minnie Howard house, and then the Stevenson house was on the corner. So it's kind of a personal for us because he was right there when we started.
Wow.
Also, Pocatello's school children responded in force to the mayor's million-minute marathon, which he challenged school children to read 1,000,000 minutes worth of reading. You have the participation levels in terms of schools and minutes for this year. I don't have the figure on how many school children participated, but
Yeah. There was varying levels, like Holy Spirit, 80% of the kids participated. Some of the schools were a little less. Gate City was the overall winner. They, out of that total, read just over 100,000 just at their school. So they got to slime their principal at the end of the year.
That's a good idea.
That's incentive.
in March, the library provided space and hosted the AARP Tax Assistance Program. And of course, all summer long and continuing on is the summer reading program for children who are out of school for the summer, which is a very important program so that they don't relapse back and lose the progress that they have made during the school year in their reading.
Sometimes we hear that children relapse during the summer. What are we doing this summer?
So this summer we have 3 different levels of summer reading. We have our adult program, a program for teens, and a program for children. As of Monday, we had 699 children signed up for the children's program. We have a big wall of stars where we've written every single child's name down on this big star map. And then they get a little pamphlet that has a bunch of challenges on it. Read a book to your dog, read a book in a tree, read a book about a subject you've never read about, different challenges. Once they've done half of them, they can come in and pick a prize, which is a free book. Once they've completed, they get another free book, and then they also are entered into our grand prize drawing where we're giving away some kind of bigger, more exciting prizes this year. So we've seen slightly higher numbers this year than last year, and there are children in the library all day, every day. We have different activities for them. They do art on Mondays, book wagon on Tuesdays, they show movies on Wednesdays, they do a food craft on Thursdays, and on Fridays they do a STEM activity, so a science, technology sort of activity. So we have something going on every single day for kids in the library to kind of keep that interest going and that activity level going.
And it's not too late to sign up, right?
Nope, the program only runs until August 16th, but you can definitely still sign up.
Tempted to say thanks.
So you can see that the library is quite active in engaging folks of all ages and helping the community. In the context of the state, I provided some statistics for you. Just so you know, the Marshall Library is the 5th largest in Idaho in terms of its population served. Most of the other 4 that are higher are in the Treasure Valley area, and I believe Idaho Falls are above Pocatello. But it has an astonishingly high percentage of population served compared to the people with registered borrowers compared to the population at 88%, which is really astonishing to me. They're busy folks over there. I give you lots of statistics these are selected statistics I thought you might be interested in. Complete statistics can be found at this URL that I gave you on the sheet.
Sandy,
They're
can I
compiled
just
by
comment?
Sorry?
I just wanted to comment on your statistics. The one thing that has struck me in the monthly meetings of the board is these numbers just go up and up and up. I mean, even the programs you've talked about already, the participation, as you say, is doubling and tripling, but all the numbers just steadily going up. So very impressed with how you're serving the community.
Well, and that they are. These are compiled by the Idaho Commission for Libraries in Boise, and by all public libraries across the state. So this gives you a slice, and you can, if you're interested, you can see other libraries' statistics and see how we compare them on particular points. In terms of the future, as Linda was suggesting, still going forward, still churning out programs and activities for the citizens of Pocatello. And coming up in October, the library will eliminate fines for minors. So we're talking about overdue fines. In an attempt to encourage continued use of the library. We don't want to discourage minors from coming in or checking out a book because they may owe $1 fine or $2.50 fine. I think that would be a better message to send to the children and young people. This was approved by the board. We debated a number of options and decided to go with the minors only aspect of this. We'll watch that starting in October and see how it goes.
Do you know what the total number of fines due are?
If you look at like our snapshot from last year, if you look at fines that were collected from minors' accounts, it's between $5,000 and $6,000. So it's a very small portion of the amount of fines that we take in. And then it affects, I think there were something like 263 kids whose cards would have been completely blocked, that now they're going to be able to regain access because their fines will be waived. And then moving forward, we'll have parents who will be like, well, you can't check out that many books because what if you return them late? Hopefully now they'll be like, well, go ahead, check out 10, because if we get them back late a day or two, it's not going to really affect things.
How are you going to notify those people?
We're going to do it as we're going to do big press and just talk about the program in general, and then we're just going to waive the fines as they come in. So we'll say, if you think you have fines on your card, come on in, we'll get your account taken care of and moving forward. So we're not just going to go through and like waive from the database, we'll wait till they actually come in, but we are planning on doing a lot of press around this, just so that people, because I think it's a really feel-good program too, and it'll make the library, it get some attention, some positive attention for us, saying like, hey, you know what, we want children here, we want children to read. This is our new program, get excited about it, come get your kid a card, and try to kind of drum up that kind of support for it. In September, right as school's starting, we're going to try and tie it into the school year.
Do you define minors under 18?
Correct. And we already
those
have...
who transition from 17 to 18 before this program starts?
We'll have to deal with that on a case-by-case basis. We already have a different card, like a minor's card is tagged in our system differently. So there's already a patron code difference. And so I think we'll be able to, because ultimately minors aren't responsible for the fines on their cards. Usually a child doesn't have the ability to get their books back on time, even if they wanted to. So a lot of times if we have someone who comes in and they're 18, 19 now, and they have a 5-year-old late charge, most of the time we'll end up waiving that anyway, because it was the parent who's ultimately responsible, and we want to give the now adult a clean chance at a clean card. It gets a little harder when it's lost items, things like that, but if it's just late charges from bringing stuff back, we tend to just waive that, because it's more important to have the person there using the library than to collect $15, $20.
One question I have, are there any barriers to the use of our library?
Well, I'd like to think no. Usually the biggest thing we encounter is people who don't have necessarily the proper identification to get a library card. So you need to have a photo ID and something with your current address. So a lot of times we'll have to say, oh, well, we can't get you a card today, but as soon as you bring in your utility bill or your lease or mail yourself something, we can set you up. So it's usually, you can't today, but come on in next time and we'll get you set up. That tends to be the biggest one. Other than that, I think, we're on a bus route. The bus is there all day, every day, so I think we're a pretty accessible place to get to. And we try to be really flexible, so those case-by-case basis, if there's somebody who really needs a library card but they have no photo ID, maybe they're that 17-year-old sort of thing, we'll go get your yearbook. We have them all, and we'll find you in the yearbook, and that counts as photo ID. So we really do try to go as far as we can to just help that person get a card, because that's ultimately what we're there for, is to let people access the materials.
Do we have economically challenged people that feel they maybe can't use the library?
Not that we've heard. I don't know that we're necessarily asking. I would say, again, hopefully the location where we are definitely helps the use of the library. And then, like I said, being an active, and they did a special program, the transit did a program with us and then with the parks this summer, that any kid who got one of their little tickets could ride to the library for free all summer, or to Ross Park free all summer. And I think things like that are really beneficial.
Good.
So I'm sure we could do more. I mean, there's always more that we could do, but I do think we are doing a pretty good job at trying to kind of hit
I'm
that market.
fascinated by the approach you're taking in terms of the surplus fruits and vegetables that people are growing. Would you talk for the viewing audience a little bit about that program?
Yeah, so we do our traditional food for fines right around Thanksgiving, where we take in canned goods. But the produce is just kind of a bonus program. I'm not even sure if the food bank approached us or if somebody in the library world had heard of someone else doing it and was like, hey, we should do that too. But we collect fresh produce all summer long, so anyone who has leftovers from their garden can bring them into the library. We don't do it for fines or anything like that. We're just a collection place. And then as soon as it builds up, a couple days a week, we just have a staff member run it over to the food bank. And we actually last year was the first year we had done that. We actually had people coming in early, like March, saying, hey, are you guys still doing that? I want to plant more. I'm going to plant a couple extra rows because I know you guys are doing this program. So it just kind of makes it a little easier for people. Instead of having to worry about when the food bank's open and them doing it themselves, they can just drop it off at the library and we'll collect it for a day or two and take it over.
How much zucchini did you get?
I haven't actually seen any of the donation bins, but I know last year the zucchini was that was by far the thing we got the most of. And then when the tomatoes started coming in, we just had a giant box of tomatoes.
I'm anxious to come in and see the wood turning exhibit.
It's gorgeous. The wood turning exhibit is absolutely beautiful. So yeah, that's a good one.
Good. Do we have other questions for the library?
I just wanted to hit the last point on your list because you hadn't gotten to that yet, and I know you hadn't had a chance, but the library is going to be an important partner in the community in the census in 2020. They're a site where people can go in because they're trying to get most people to take the census online. And so the library computers will be really important for people to be able to go in and do the census there. But the other part of this is that they're actively participating on our committee, the Complete Count Committee. Cresta Harwood is on our Complete Count Committee, and then also on one of our subcommittees in I think the government subcommittee, I believe, is the one she's going to be on. But they're taking an active role in helping us make sure we get a complete count in our area.
Well, we really appreciate Linda's involvement with the library. She's kept us posted in terms of what's happening. So you've got a good one, Linda. Anything else? Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming. we'll turn the time to the mayor, and we're ready for Bannock Development.
Well, if you'd go ahead and read that for me while I pull this up, I apologize. We had
Okay.
some last-minute budget things we had to...
John Regetz, Bannock Development Corporation, Executive Director, is present and will give the council an update on Bannock Development Corporation's activities and achievements. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Mr. President. Glad to be here. Thanks, all for taking a few minutes of your time to get an update from us. We're going to start off with some of the dashboard statistics that we were wanting to present last time. And what we've done is we've put together a collection of what we think are probably useful statistics, useful data that you can actually use. And we know we can use some of it in some of our efforts. And this is kind of a dashboard that we've put together with some of the premier statistics that we've found. But there's some other ones here that are pretty interesting and that we like to track. Recently, of course, we've been tracking building permits a lot. And this gives us an idea, and we put our data in context with prior data so you can see trends as well as just the current static data. So, building permits have been going up. In 2018, we saw 326 housing units permitted, and that compares to 223 of the previous year. So over 100 unit increase from one year to the next.
John, is that Bannock County or Pocatello?
It would be the same thing. It'd be Bannock County. The MSA covers the same area. So, but primarily we get the information from Pocatello and Chubbuck because they have more current permit data submitted. So retail sales, another area that we like to track, shows that we've continually been improving since 2009, and $217 million for 2017. And that compares to $211 million for 2016. And then labor force, of course, is another area that we keep very close track of. Labor force has been fairly consistent, but increasing. Now remember, this is about half of what our effective labor force is. Remember the last time we talked, I related to you our labor force for covered data, which is the covered statistics are for people that can apply for unemployment insurance, that get wages and salaries. It doesn't include folks like executives and self-employed or business owners. So we're looking at about 42,000 people for 2017, and that compares to about 41,000 people for 2016. And then in that year, in 2017, unemployment was 3% as compared to 3.5% for the previous year. And so the unemployment rate is this orange line here, and then the total workforce are the blue lines. So that's data that we can relate when we're asked, but some of the competitive data that we really think sets us apart from other areas. If you take a look at the mountain and West Coast region, the western United States, these are communities and areas that we compete with. And our housing prices are here, and this is San Jose. And we did a call trip in 2016, if you recall, to the San Francisco, San Diego area. And what we were finding there is these housing prices were causing troubles for the employers because their employees couldn't afford to live there for the wages they were paying. So everybody was in a pinch. But 5 times as high, 5 times as much to have a home in San Jose as in Bannock County, 4 times as high in San Francisco and San Diego, which is about 2.5 times. And then it comes down. National median is a lot closer to us than it is on the West Coast. So, we have a very competitive advantage to the Silicon Valley and to the West Coast for housing costs. So we can attract talent, and then we can attract employers that would follow them.
John, what is Salt Lake? Yeah, I've got Salt Lake there. I'm curious what Salt Lake looks like.
Salt Lake's about 1.5 times what we are. 300,000 is your median home price versus 166.
How current is Bannock County's data?
That's going to be probably 2017 data, maybe.
So it
maybe
didn't get the 20-some% increase across the board?
Yeah, so it'll still be substantially, it won't be twice as high, maybe 1.5 times as high.
So how quickly does this get updated? I mean,
We'll probably update it annually because you get the firm data at the end of every year. It turns over every year, but we'll update it as quickly as we can get new data.
So like the valuations just came out higher, to Roger's point, can we get that portion when those numbers are final in the next?
I mean, the valuations compared, or we'll update it on an annual basis at least.
The actual sales may be more important.
Maybe more important than
the evaluations, I would
evaluations.
think.
That's true.
Right.
But how accessible are the actual sales?
We can get them from a multiple listing, and I would say that at least 80% of the sales go through multiple listing.
What's the data source here?
This is we get most of this data from the Department of Labor, and they have a statistician there that gets that for us. So it's usually a year behind, what the current year is to get the data, because it's done on a national compilation, so you can have these kinds of comparisons. Because without the comparison, it's a number that's out there.
So you're going to see across the board probably everything increasing, regardless if it's as much the valuations like that we've seen here. If we go on off home sales, you're going to see the Salt Lake Valley increasing as well, I'm sure. So
Right. I mean, it won't go up as fast as ours. I mean, we'll see more of an increase probably percentage-wise, but still the comparison, apples to apples, gives us an advantage to places, because we have a lot of high-tech companies that are growing and expanding in eastern Idaho, from the INL to the FBI, to ICCU. They're all looking for technical, trained, talented people, and why not move from that area to an area like ours?
Sure.
John, if it'd be helpful, I could get those multiple listing statistics for you for Bannock County.
That would be wonderful.
I think it'd be helpful for you.
Thanks. So some other statistics that help compare us to other parts of the country. Homeowners insurance. And there's 51 data points in this. 51 states and territories measured in this. We're the second lowest cost for homeowners insurance. Another attraction for talent that would like to locate in our area.
But that's based on value too, isn't it?
Pardon?
That's based on the value of a house.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
Should be. Auto insurance, we actually have the lowest auto insurance rates in the United States. So those are things that can turn the table for a company that's looking for talent, a high-tech company especially.
What about the transportation costs?
So I guess are you talking like gasoline costs and so forth? We don't have that one tracked, but we can certainly add something.
I think we're real high in that area.
Seems like we
John,
are.
if
Well, I've seen some statistics.
Actually, we just came out as dropping and being a bit lower than the rest of the state.
The second highest fuel I found in the last 2.5 weeks is Pocatello.
But I've seen different data
For that cheap.
that suggests that one of the highest cost of living things for Pocatello is transportation.
Yeah, and that
We
was,
have to commute everywhere. I'd like to see the industry growth.
expected industry growth. As with the national trend, we see services being the fastest growing sector, as you would expect.
And this is for national trend. This is not a Bannock County.
Well, this actually is going to be a measurement for Idaho, I think,
Okay.
is what this is going to be. But throughout our area is going to kind of parallel, just not at the same volumes. It'll parallel what happens for the whole state.
Go back on that, because we had a 1,106,000.
See, this is going to be a statewide. That's why I say it's
Yeah.
going to be a statewide
Okay.
average. So we see that area being the fastest growing area, which the service sector has been for quite some time. Goods producing, 2.46. Some of the areas, leisure and hospitality, we know that the visitor sector is increasing. That's one of the larger ones. Manufacturing, we happen to be one of the states in the country that is growing faster than the rest of the country in manufacturing. Healthcare, as we've known, has been increasing rapidly. And professional and business services, of course, as we become more of a technical society.
I had a question for you. If service producing is the most expected, sector for growth, could you give us some examples of things that Bannock Development is doing to encourage growth in our area in that realm?
Well, I mean, we try to support those areas. Take for instance, like ICCU or the FBI or Farm Bureau. We've worked to try to get them together with appropriate departments at Idaho State University to get them the training they need. Some of it is just some specific types of curriculum that they need. Sometimes they need more expansion in the department. So for services, the business school can really be the biggest assistance there, and the College of Technology can supply some technical support in those areas.
How are you working with those industries to make that happen?
Basically, we just do an introduction, try to find out. It usually starts with a retention expansion visit, say like for ICCU or for or even with, we obviously keep in touch with the FBI to help them accommodate their housing needs. Again, that's another area that we support, not just services, but a lot of businesses that are going to need more housing to try and encourage the construction there. But typically what it is, it starts with a retention expansion visit to find out how they're doing, if they have any needs. They tell us, well, gee, we're having an issue with, we need more IT people. And we did that for Farm Bureau and set them up with an appointment with the head of the computer department. They put together they adjusted put together a different brand of curriculum that Farm Bureau was using. So just one specific. So it'll run the gamut of what they need. It's training, or it might just be the type of curriculum or the amount of curriculum. Like on semiconductor, we've always been pushing to try to get more from the electrical engineering department, and now we're starting to get more.
Could you click on the cost of living there?
Yeah, our cost of living for goods is about the same as the rest of the nation, but where we really are, again, it's housing. It really pulls down our cost of living.
And does the general public have access to this or do we have access to this? Okay.
This is on our website.
Okay.
Yep, we just go to county statistics, and then we may put like economic statistics on there to make it a little more.
So we take that more thorough look at our.
So tell everybody your website so that everybody watching and.
It's www.bannockdevelopment.org. Just spelled out.
So are the majority of your charts and graphs that you have from the Department of Labor statistics, or do you go through any other, like for example on this, what sources do you?
Tableau Public is the program we use, so we get the data from the Department of Labor and we enter it into this website, this database, which is actually it's a website database.
Right. So all of your information and statistics are just coming from the Department of Labor?
Right.
Okay.
Is there another place they ought to be looking that you know of?
Well, you were mentioning the MLS
the
and different
MLS and
things.
stuff.
Yeah, I just was curious if that's where it was from. So, okay.
Do you do this on a city by city in Idaho basis, or are you just doing this on a national basis?
We're just, we're pulling together the data to compare our area to just a selected. The areas that we saw for housing, we just pulled that data for housing. But the rest of this data is basically ours and some other comparative data that we've gotten or that we've found on a national basis.
I recently did some research and found, for example, if you made $50,000 in Pocatello, you needed to be making $52,400 in Idaho Falls to stay level.
Mm-hmm.
If you were making $50,000 in Pocatello, I think you had to be making $60,900 in Boise just to stay level.
Sure.
And I would think that would be a a good thing for us to have on a regional basis.
That would be.
To contrast with.
Cost of living, state, within the state.
Because sometimes we do get into a competition statewide too.
That's interesting, Roger. How did you arrive at those numbers?
It's just, did research on cost of living. There's a place you can go and just plug in what the amount you're making here is versus, and you compare city to city. And a lot of people use that in relocation. You know, if you were looking at a job in Pocatello as a professor, you would say, okay, what is my buying power of that money in Pocatello versus somewhere? A lot of people use that.
Interesting.
I think
That's good to know.
that's a good comparison.
That would be a really good comparison for us to have on our
That would be a
website.
little different approach than the cost of living approach. It does percentages based on living percent.
But it does show, you know, it just plugs in and it's a composite and it'll break down. I think that might have been where I saw transportation costs were high as part of that cost of living compared to other things.
So with that, is it a website you go to? And is it
I
something
just
that
did
they
a
could?
Google search.
Google.
I just did a Google search.
Google
and
knows
found
everything.
Google plug, right?
three or four resources that way and found one that was most user-friendly for somebody with my skill set. So,
Yeah, very
That's
good.
good.
Well, that's good information. We can sort of put it on there. Like I say, it's data we can use if we're in competition within the state. So, okay. Let's see, state tax rankings, which is something we always have to compare ourselves with to other parts of the country. And so we are the 40th lowest tax ranking in the United States. And so some of our competition, Oregon is 28th, so they're a little higher than us. Even more in Washington. Nevada's going to be a little higher than us as well. And so the higher the number, the better off you are in this ranking. So Utah's the closest, 29th, 35th in Colorado. They're doing a little better. Let's see.
Is this based
How about
on
Montana?
income tax?
This is based on tax burden. This is everything.
Everything.
This is property taxes, income taxes, all the taxes that people pay. And so we're the 11th lowest tax burden in the nation.
What is Montana?
Yeah, I was going to say Montana
42.
beats us by a couple of states.
What's Texas? We always are fighting against Texas.
Texas is
Oh, yeah, it
surprising,
should be New York.
33rd. So they're like almost 10 spots higher than us.
And what's California? I'm curious.
Tax hell.
10.
Click on
They're
Connecticut.
number 10. They're bucking. They're way up.
Click on Connecticut, John.
You did geography test.
We'll give him a test of geography
Jersey
here.
next.
Hybrid. So
6. Wow.
they're almost at the head of the pack. Yep. So those are like I say, some of the data that you can use, put in context and stuff that actually enters into the site selection consideration. So we'll bail out of this, and then you of course can pick it up anytime on our website. That's not ours.
John, what do you think we as a city council and the mayor can do to assist in economic development with you specifically? What can we do to help you?
As always, support development out at the airport, and we're pushing ahead to try to get projects located out there. Data that you've got, that would be excellent. If you're working on projects, let us know what's going on so we can get in a little further on the curve than later.
Based on our meeting this last week with Banning Development Board of Directors, I would sense that the people in the audience need to recognize that what we say to other people is going to make the most difference. If it's a girl or a guy at a restaurant, when someone comes to town, we need to be positive. There's too much negativity out there, poor me syndrome. So we want to support you because we know you're on the cutting edge.
Yep. And as we develop a lot of the projects, there's a lot of development projects in the community, and housing is just as important as anything else, as you all know right now. But housing construction is probably the most important thing to try to get homes built. We seem to have a sufficient number of lots going up throughout the community, but we need to get construction. And so our local contractors have a little bit more capacity, and we need to think about some spec buildings. One of the meetings that we just had with the FBI and one of our developers indicated that the big wave that they anticipate is going to be at the beginning of the first quarter, or the beginning of the second quarter next year, end of the first quarter. So we're talking about March. End of March. So what we need to do is to try to help encourage them and see what, if you know of ways, or they tell you of ways that they could get assistance, or areas that they could use some more assistance to help them build more homes, that would be great. And the mix we're looking at is about the same mix of employment we have now.
Great, thank you.
So, and we appreciate your support, as always, in our budget requests. So, again, we anticipate and appreciate continued support.
John, I see periodically different cities or counties really, they develop a video and they advertise with that video and they market with that video, and they have it where that video can be called up on their sites. Do we have anything going that way?
We do have videos. Yeah, we've got several different videos for several different applications.
Okay, because the one I've mentioned is Elko. I see that all the time right now. And, just something that's promotional, shows the diversity of what you can be doing. So we have stuff like that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And we can try to make sure that we have a more prominent access to it on the website.
Do we push that out anywhere?
They go out on our flash drives. And we have specific shows that we go to. We tailor it. But for the most part, we send those out on our flash drives.
Roger's
Trade shows.
seeing these on TV, I guess. When you're traveling, you're seeing them on as advertisements.
We see a lot of Elko on some of our cable here.
Okay. I don't watch TV, so
Well, to get them on TV is
it's expensive.
those folks don't round off to our budget probably.
Do you work with Visit Pocatello, though? I mean, if you're working with Visit Pocatello, there might be a way to collaborate to get some of that out there. So
some of that information, sure.
super.
So, anyway, some of the projects we've been working on that you know about, with the Frigitech project, cold storage, we're finalizing the lease with those folks. Again, that kind of morphed because they need rail service. And because of all that, we've seen some more interest from the logistics sector. And unit train and transload development is ongoing. And the 3PL that we're working with, third-party logistics provider, they're out recruiting customers. We've put together a pretty substantial database for them. And their area they're looking at is from Rexburg out to Hagerman. And so to support that, they wanted introductions to all the economic development organizations throughout that area. So we've gotten them introduced to the people up and down I-15. Introduced them to Connie Stover, who used to work with us, and so she's getting them introduced out in the Magic Valley, the Magic Valley, to get them introduced out there. So they should be talking to all the food processors, all the all the shippers and growers in the ag sector to try to develop as big a base of clients as they can. And actually that's growing. The state's kind of excited about it. A lot of these shippers and ag processors and producers are excited as well. So and it'll even expand beyond that to anybody that can ship containerized products. Could be manufactured goods.
They're having an issue on the west side of the state doing that, and so they've actually reached out to the onion farmers and stuff on the west side of the state as a shipper to get their product to the west coast. And so they literally are covering the southern part of the state with that. So it's
basically
good.
the whole Snake River plain.
Yeah.
The whole Snake River Valley. So some of the other prospects that we've had, Rick referred a manufacturer, firearms manufacturer that was in the well, actually on social media, looking for a new location. We put together a preliminary proposal and sent it to info.com for the website, which always reads to me circular files. We got a response. So they're taking a look at it, and we'll follow up, and we'll go through the front end of the website and see if we can't get a phone number. We have a steel fabricator that contacted us directly, and they've been doing a real estate review, and we've given them some sites that we think could help them out, and so we'll continue to follow up with them, and they're going to do some more site visits in the future to be a little more open, we hope. We have a call center that came to us through Ready. The first phase will be about 125 jobs. Frontline starts at $10.25, goes to $15 an hour. Supervisory, the team leads and the managers, 17 to 24 an hour. And then they have one site director. I think ultimately if they get to a 300-person center, which is their model, but they start out smaller, it'll be about $100,000 a year. So we'll continue to work on that. We're still in the short list, and we'll see what they think about our offerings. I have another firearms manufacturer that we met at the SHOT Show. It's a young company. They want to employ about 10 to 15 people, but they've got some innovative new products out there. They're committed to our location. They just need to sort out personal finances and their family situation there. So we'll continue to work with them on that. The BLM headquarters, you've all heard about that in the national media. We're jockeying to keep a position in on that race, and working with our delegation and Department of Interior as well, with our mayors and commissioner and local development organizations.
How much does our residing on 2 freeways do for that type of stuff?
That logistics solution, it does 2 things. It provides a logistics solution that can provide access to various markets and suppliers, but moreover, it gives us the opportunity to have the ability to supply the whole western part of the United States, the mountain states and the West Coast, because we're the gate city, and we just naturally have that access to the West Coast. So we have prospects that are interested in us because not so much for distribution, but for manufacturing and then distribution. That combination, we can supply the West Coast and mountain states more effectively than most of the rest of the union.
Well, it looks to me like with some of the cost of living data, and knowing that some of the distribution jobs are not the higher, not way top end, but they're good medium range jobs, and then 2 freeways you can access plus our other modes of transportation would be ideal for some of that.
Yep, and that's why the folks that are, the 3PL folks are looking at the amount of food, if you want to call it that, and ag products that come through the area. That's why they're interested in our location here. And the folks with the cold storage recognized it right away too. The amount of product coming through. We've heard there's a bottleneck, but that's it. It's the bottleneck going west to the ports. But you're right. And the big thing about the logistics sector is that it supports our local industries. Our local businesses and industries can grow and expand. And indeed, this all came from a site, from a retention expansion visit. So that's really our first order of business, to support that. So just some of our efforts, our marketing efforts that we've completed, had 4 site visits, so we're on track to keep up with last year's 8 site visits. A couple more if you count the visits we've done with the Director of Commerce. We've done 12 responses. 8 of them were direct, a couple from Commerce and a couple from Ready. And then you see some of the trade shows that we've been to, we've talked about before. Since we last met, we've been to the Site Selectors Guild. This is where we meet with the site selectors that are the premier in the United States. I have 51 of those, and they were all there. Their whole membership was there, and the picture you see is where they set up 51 tables and they rotate the site selectors to visit with groups of economic developers. So you get to have a pretty intense conversation with about 8 of them at that event. We just got back from Select USA, and there you see a picture with Wilbur Ross, who's the Commerce Secretary for the United States, with our Commerce Director. at an event that we had at the booth there, an announcement. And so we had 3 solid leads that came from that, which is a little different. We'll see, what their approach is to putting a company in the United States, if they'd have population or if they just need more efficient manufacturing and production costs. And so we've got another one we'll do with funding the PAC Pharma event, if we can do some more fundraising. And then we've got our 10 committees, of which the housing study team is one. And then I've talked to you about what we do there. And we wrapped up Year Fit this past quarter with a really good event at Irving Middle School. And they were really pleased with the attendance of that. And we got a little different model there that we may apply in the future. But that came off really well at the end of the year. We did essentially 9 events. So that wraps up the presentation. Any other questions? Appreciate your time and support.
Thank you. Appreciate you, John. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, then we will move on to agenda item number 4, was the utility rate study update. Raftelis and city staff city staff presented a draft utility study to council on May 9, 2019. Since that time, the revenue and expenditure calculations have been refined. City staff wishes to present the final utility study for council's consideration for use in budgeting purposes for the next 5 years. Can't see out of my glasses, can't see with them, can't see without them. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Jeff Mansfield, Public Works Director and City Engineer. Appreciate this opportunity. So as the Mayor mentioned, we presented the draft utility rate study to Council on May 9th, 2019. Staff has put a lot of time and effort into this, and I want to thank all of them that participated in it. This was a first time that a lot of us had done a rate study, but I think it was a success, and that's mostly due in part to the dedication and the efforts that the staff put into it. So I want to thank them for that. I'm not gonna rehash the whole rate study presentation that we did in May 9th. I know you guys have a busy day today, and so this will be short and sweet. Just as a recap, some of the major objectives of the study include development of the following: a financial plan for the enterprise funds for the 5-year study period, which is fiscal years 20 through 24 for water, WPC, and sanitation. Development of service analysis to ensure equitable recovery of costs for customer classes, and develop cost of service, water, WPC, and sanitation rates along with rate alternatives. So as we refine the revenue and expenditure calculations, the rate revenue increases modified slightly, and this is what is projected for the next 5 years for water. It'd be a 4% increase for the first 3 years, and then a 3% increase for the last 2 years. The reason why it's a little bit front-loaded is because of some of the capital improvement projects that we have planned for early on in the 5-year period, and so it's a little bit higher for the first 3 years and then drops down. For WPC, this is exactly what we showed you last time, I believe, and it's 3% across the board for the 5-year period.
I don't know if I asked this before. Did the WPC calculate the impact of Great Western losing their discount in the next couple of years?
I don't know that that's going to happen in this 5-year period. I think it's not a 10-year agreement.
I thought it was a 5-year.
We would have to look at it and see if it was a 5 or a 10-year.
I know we talked about it. We looked in to see when that would be coming off, and I don't recall if it happened in this 5-year period or not, but we did discuss that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
We need to look at that so we can make sure that the council knows what that is, if that's it was a 5-year or a 10-year.
Yeah, I'll look at that and find out when that comes off.
because theoretically, that's a pretty significant bump in terms of revenue. Not huge, but
A bump nonetheless.
Yes, I will look into that for you.
Okay, thank you.
So for WPC, we're at 3% across the board for the 5-year period.
Jeff, I'm going to interrupt you again, sorry, and I wanted to make sure, and I'm sure Roger's thinking about this as well as the study and stuff for
Johnny Creek.
Johnny Creek, thank you, Linda,
Yeah.
is also in this 3%.
It is.
It's been, okay.
It is. So we put funds in there for a capital construction fund that will come out for the study period, and then that money can be utilized to do a design. It can be utilized to participate with the homeowners in an LID or different things like that, however the council chooses. But that money will be available over the 5-year period to account for that.
well, I'm thinking that there continues to be bipartisan talk about infrastructure. And if there ever was the trigger pulled on infrastructure, a shovel-ready engineered project of that nature would probably get towards the top pretty fast.
Absolutely.
Well, and Linda's been working hard with EPA folks and DEQ folks and stuff on that as well, so, I mean.
And Jeff and I at the AIC conference in June attended a couple of sessions where we talked to some of those folks more about where some other grant sources could, some funds could come from.
So we're thinking that's going to be a priority for the council in the near future, and so I'm just glad. I just wanted to double check. I didn't want to get off track. I wanted to make sure it was in there. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a priority in my mind. I want you to know that. And, I know the mayor's been talking to all our lobbyists. We've put together information for the mayor to take to the lobbyists. We're talking to DEQ about it. I'm talking to people about, what it takes to establish an LID and what that would look like. And once I have more information, I'll come back to you guys for clarification.
Perfect.
Under sanitation, we've got a 3% increase there across the board as well. So any questions on where we're looking at for the rate revenue increases?
Let me ask a question about your graph,
Okay.
just to make sure I understand. The undesignated dollars, like on that water table, that
Okay.
4th line down, 5th line down,
Okay.
those amounts vary across the chart. Is that per year or accumulated?
That's accumulated. So at the end of the 5-year period, so really kind of the goal of the rate study, if you recall, see if I can find this here. If you recall, they had some graphs that here we go. So the gray is the source of funds, the orange or yellowish mustard color is the use of funds, and then the blue is your ending fund balance. And so really the goal of the rate study is that your source of funds matches your use of funds, and then you pretty much are at your target reserve, your reserve policy at the end of the year. And so that would be this line right here. And so when you look at this, you'll see that you have your target reserves right here, and then you have your undesignated right here. And so as you go through, you'll notice it goes from 2.9, in 22 it gets down to 0.4, then in 2024 it's back up to 1. And if you look at this graph right here in 22, you really don't have much undesignated reserves in that account. And so it's dropped a little, just barely above that target reserve line.
So where's that money going?
Well, as you recall, we've got a lot of capital improvement projects planned for very early on in the project. And so if you'll see our reserve, not only are we charging a higher rate increase, but we also are burning some of our excess reserves, our undesignated reserves. And so a lot of those really expensive capital improvement projects will be done in these first 3 years. And so we're charging a little bit more on the rate, and then we're also burning through some of the reserves. And so by year 4, you've pretty much burned all of that undesignated reserve policy.
Why is it called undesignated if you have a plan where you're going to spend it?
I don't know. Ashley, can you help me with why it's not excess and why it's called undesignated rather than excess?
Ashley Welch, Deputy CFO. My guess is that they don't have plans for it during this rate study period, but they're possibly going to use it in the next rate study period. That's why I think it's undesignated.
That balance is declining, so it's being used somewhere. There must be a plan for it.
He's talking about this one.
Seems like Joyce was always very adamant that we call that undesignated and not excess. I don't know exactly why.
Well, excess is what you are making sure you hold in reserve. And undesignated, my guess would be, is what you're going to be expending from reserves.
Yeah, I imagine it probably just has to do with it's above and beyond our targeted reserve policy. It doesn't mean it's extra, it just means it's above and beyond that.
It's there, it's available.
My thought process is undesignated because we may have an idea of what we need to do now, but that idea may change because of an emergency or something. And if we put a line item that we want this money will be used for X, then you can't use it for Y. And so that would make sense to me of why it is. But it's a question we probably should just ask.
I'd just like to know where that money's going from.
Let's ask Ref, tell us why they...
$700,000 a year that's being called on. It looks like a slush fund.
Well, there may be a skunk on the table, but is it possibly with the growth and expansion that we're experiencing in the city?
Well,
let's find out what they've done it for.
A lot of those really expensive projects that we're looking at very early on in the 5-year period have to do with getting a redundant source up into the Highland Bench area. I mean, as we've talked about that, we don't have a redundant source up in there, and we need to do that. You're looking at a population of what do we figure that was, Justin? 30% of our population in that area.
Yeah, it's 20%.
20%. So 20% of our population up there, we need to get a redundant source of water up to that area, and that's going to be a very expensive project. And so that's what's intended to happen for those first 3 years.
But that isn't just about new development. That's a redundant source regardless.
Regardless if development happens or not, we need to provide additional redundant source up in that area.
So will you just follow up with Ref Tellis and let us know why it is undesignated?
Sure.
And my guess is it's kind of like what we do, because they have the target reserves and they have undesignated, so it's like our excess reserves. It just has a little bit of a different name to it. So it's there, it's not set aside for anything specific, but we're planning on having a little bit extra as undesignated, so to be used as we see fit.
But it's being planned to be spent.
Yeah.
Right.
Based on that graph. So I guess that's what I'm wondering where it's going.
It sounds like there is a plan, but you like to keep some flexibility because the plan might need to shift.
So I would rather not speculate on what it is. If you'll find out what it is,
please,
and then we'll go from there.
I will definitely do that. Thank you, Ashley.
It's the mayor's retirement fund.
Yeah. Well, it looks like it's going to get burned.
I will tell you, it's going to capital improvement. Okay. Any other questions on the revenue increases? Okay. This is just kind of a quick summary of what our capacity fees will look like over the next 5 years. We don't have capacity fees for sanitation, but we do for water and WPC, and so this is a kind of just a quick graph of what that would look like.
Did you say? Sorry.
Beg your pardon?
Should we have capacity fees for sanitation?
I don't see a need for it. Your capacity fees are designed to buy into the system that the other ratepayers have already paid for. And with sanitation, there's not really a system that they're buying into. So it's not typical to have a sanitation capacity fee.
That would probably be a county-based that would be passed to us.
That would be my guess.
Yeah, and so, my guess is I don't know if they're still taking out of county materials there, but that would be something they'd have to delineate just to protect Bannock County customers versus outside customers.
Now, if we owned the landfill and we had a big system up there that we'd invested in, then it might make sense to have people buy capacity in the landfill. But as far as, people buying capacity in our trucks or things like that, it just doesn't really typically happen.
We could be like some communities that can't unload their stuff.
That's right.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's all I have for you today. Unless you guys have any other questions.
I just wanted to clarify on the earlier part. Sanitation was 3% for
Correct.
5 years, all 5 years?
Correct.
Okay.
Sounds great. Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
And probably a little plug, the less that goes into the landfill, the longer it'll last.
That's right.
So recycling and of yard waste and other materials is, help us to retain or lower cost out there.
Yeah. And as just a keynote on that, we did get an AIC award for our glass recycling program this year, and so that's been a success.
What was our second award for?
What was it, Jim? Yeah, it was our WPC phosphorus upgrade project.
That's right.
So yeah, we actually received 2 awards at AIC out of the 16 awards that were awarded for the whole state. So we did pretty well this year.
Very well.
So what do you do for an encore?
Just wait till next year.
Where we at? We don't know yet. Super, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, guys.
We'll move on to agenda item number 5 is Fire Department Facilities Repair Update. Fire staff will be available to give council an update on facility repair cost as discussed at the May 16, 2019 Budget Development Meeting. Fire Station number 2 driveway repair bid in the amount of $15,900 to replace deteriorated apparatus driveway for Fire Station number 2, 1539 North Hayes, has been received. Fire staff is seeking council's guidance regarding budgeting of the costs. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Andy Holmes, Pocatello Fire Department Assistant Chief of Support and Public Safety. And I do have a concrete bid.
So I thought that we were getting roof, I thought that's why they were coming back to us, was for stuff about roofs, not about the concrete.
They are still working. They asked if they needed to get this brought to us, and I told them that we needed to. They're still working on the roof contract. The contractors are out there. They're still working on those bids, and so they'll be back in the future with those bids for us. And so what have you got?
I have the bid from Roan Concrete for $15,900 to replace the apparatus approach and driveway at Station 2 on North Hayes. And I'm just seeking your guidance as to whether or not we should proceed with that.
Is that a reasonable cost?
Is that a reasonable cost? Yeah, we had 2 bids. This one was the lower bid. This is
Concrete's really gone out of sight.
Yeah.
Well, you got a bid on it, so.
Yeah, we also had a bid to do the sidewalks there, but that was, from what I understand, retracted from this session today. So it was just to do the driveway.
What are your thoughts, Council, on the driveway if we should?
I think it's a reasonable bid. I know of a family that built a house and didn't get the driveway included in their contract. It was a $20,000 add-on, so I think this is probably reasonable for the strength it has to be for heavy equipment.
It is. It's an 8-inch thick pad, steel reinforced. We've got 1,200 square feet of the actual driveway and then 550 square feet of the approach to it. It has to support our fire trucks, and they're pretty heavy. So I think this is a very reasonable bid. I'm seeking
I don't have any
Did-
question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, did you talk to them about Rick's driveway too, if they were going to get up there?
You're going to bring that up.
Every time we get concrete and we have to.
I think the real true question I have for the council is, are you interested in moving forward with this, or are we interested in, I know the roof bids were an important piece, and I don't know if the council had decided on which one, and so do you want to wait and see what the roof bids come in at and look at it, or are we going to drop out of sight when we roll the truck out? Are we going to drop out if you know what I mean?
Well, we'll have to stick it in 4-wheel drive eventually. They're deteriorating pretty bad. They're sinking in the actual entrance into the bay. There's probably an inch and a half, 2 inches of sinking on that. They're cracked. They're falling apart.
Water will just,
as you recall, the images that I presented last time we met was you saw the amount of deterioration that we're facing with here, and there's starting to be potholes out front. The asphalt is also, we just had it repaired, but I think that it's getting pretty bad. So,
did we determine? I know we talked about where this money was coming from. This was in this year's reserves.
Well, I think that's some of the question is it this year, or do you want to take it out of next year, or what is the desire? That was part of the solution if we wanted to do that, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't have any question about it being like a reasonable bid, but I know it's cracked. I mean, that's not 100% ideal, but I guess my thought is there are a lot of driveways that are cracked, and you make do with them for as long as you can before you have to replace them, because they get to that point. And I know it's not great, but I feel like with all of our budget issues, I kind of wonder if we have to do it this year, if we can hold off for a bit. And
what was the amount roughly of the estimate for the roof?
Okay, we had 2 different roof projects on the table. The Station 5 is the one that has the really weird architectural angles and whatnot that catches snow and water. That was the one that we pulled because we don't have a concrete design and bid for that right now.
The two together were estimated at 29.5.
But it might change if they have
that
a
was the
different-
estimate.
yeah.
So if we get the bid, we had talked about, I have in my notes from that meeting, that this would be emergency maintenance, that it could be fiscal year 19 or 20 capital contingency.
Being you had
emergency maintenance.
I think I don't know if we're gonna get to the roof this year probably, because by the time, we don't have the first one, right, the big, the plans for the Station 5. And what was the other roof issue? I'm sorry, do you mind?
Station 2 has an old gravel roof. It was bid at I do actually have an actual bid for that to replace that with a new membrane. That was not even brought up for presentation at this time. I was told it was just Station 5.
Okay.
So
we don't have a blue tarp over it or anything. Yeah.
At Station 5?
Either one.
No.
No.
But we do have a box of roof caulking that we use.
See, to me, the roofs would be more of an emergency because that's something that can really cause damage to the building if you're not having that taken care of. The driveway, what's going to happen to it? It's going to crack more, and then you still replace it down the road. That doesn't seem like that's emergency to me like a roof would be.
But the sinking is
I
not
agree.
Yeah,
just
1 inch
cracking.
is not. It's not great, but it's not.
These are pretty heavy equipment.
Yeah,
And for me,
we're
it's
running a
equipment,
$700,000, I believe, or $800,000 truck over it. And it's heavy.
Right.
So I don't know how you really compare the two, because that truck's going over it a few times a day probably.
Well,
By the time it runs out of the EMS and
Yeah, it's it would probably last another year. I'm just saying it's really unsightly right now. You drive by it and it's kind of, it's an eyesore on top of the damage that has occurred. But if that's your guidance on it, then we'll make do, and the bid will probably change next year. And the price of concrete's going up every year, and I'll have to get a new one, and so
Sure.
we don't know where it's going to be.
the building momentum will increase next year from what we've heard already today.
I'm more inclined to move forward with this and get it done.
Okay, we got one there. What are you thinking?
Actually, I'm with Jim. I think we should just get it done.
Roger?
Before we
I
have
can get it done.
bigger damage.
Heidi's-
Yeah, you know what I think.
I'm gonna get it done.
I think the roof, if we have to make a choice, the roof to me is a higher priority.
Yeah.
I agree,
If
but
we
I
have to
don't.
choose between the two, if that's where we're at. I mean, I've got a driveway problem at home, but if my roof started leaking, I would fix that first.
Yeah. And I agree with that, but is that the choice we're making?
No, and they don't have.
Well, I
the-
think the choice we're making is, do we move forward with this concrete, and they will be bringing the roof when they get
Right.
that stuff back to us, and we can have that discussion at that point.
I didn't think it was necessarily
I
an
don't-
either or. here.
Yeah, I don't know that it's an either or, and that's council
Yeah,
decides.
but we have a lot of other
Yeah,
things that
Well, they've come to us.
I mean, we're gonna
capital or whatever money could be used
event-
for too. I mean, it's not just this or the roof, it's this, I mean, we have to
Right. But
think about tax
that was
dollars
in our
and-
last
yeah.
discussion, that's where we would do these things from.
Well, it sounds like we've got 4 of them anyway that are saying, let's get it done, and then we'll discuss the roofs later. And a couple of them that are, I understand a roof is more important than a driveway because it will cause a lot more damage. And so we need to know what that roof looks like. And so what I'm hearing right now from a majority is let's proceed and see what, get us that roof stuff taken care of quickly.
Very well. Thank you.
So I think that's the direction I'm feeling.
Just a quick, so are we doing one from the 2019 funds, I'm assuming? And if we come back to the roof problem, maybe that in 2020?
2019, it will have to be a 2019 thing because we're in 2019 and I don't imagine this bid's going to be okay until next summer.
No, it'll probably change next
Two
summer.
different
If-
funding
And so it would be, October is when we're going to be changing those numbers over anyway, so, okay. Sounds like we're moving forward with it.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll move to agenda item number 6, Fire Department inspection of mobile food vendors and proposed fees for inspections. Fire Department staff will be present to discuss the potentially unsafe situation regarding mobile food vendors. There are no regulation guidelines for mobile food vendors in the city's code. At this time, staff is seeking direction from the council regarding possible solutions and creating a permit inspection fee.
Okay, so this is an issue that it's emerging quite rapidly in our city as well as across the state as mobile food vendors. And I'm sure that you've all seen them show up on street corners and in front of other businesses, taco trucks, Thai Zap, for instance. These are mobile food vendors. Currently, we do not have any regulations for these. They have issues with the LP gas that they have, that they use for cooking. They have suppression issues for their cooking appliances that are all regulated by NFPA, but we don't have any of those adopted in our code. Now, the 2018 fire code is going to have a new section in it, section 319 on these mobile food trucks, and we haven't adopted that yet, but we soon will, I'm anticipating. And once that happens, then we're obligated to enforce those codes. We do not have a permit nor inspection structure as of now for it, so I just want to get ahead of the curve on this and bring it to your awareness that it is happening, and get your guidance as to how to proceed as far as putting the permit fee and the inspection fee into the Exhibit L fee schedule before it gets, too late essentially, so that we can have that in place just in case, we go into the fiscal year 2020, and if it's not there, then we don't have that avenue to use that. We are actually doing inspections on these mobile food vendor vehicles, mostly via the health department has required them to get an inspection from the fire department. So
Andy, I guess I have a question. You're inspecting, and we have a fee structure for inspecting brick and mortar building restaurants. Is that correct?
Yes, and it's just a different animal here because they're not brick and mortar. They move around so much, There's no regulation that we have to approach them with, other than an NFPA checklist that we go through to make sure that their LP gas containers are secure, that they have fire extinguishers, and exiting's appropriate.
So why wouldn't we just do the same? A restaurant's a restaurant in my mind, whether it's on wheels or whether it's brick and mortar. What is the difference there, and why wouldn't we, if we're doing the same inspection?
One of the issues is that they have to have clearances from buildings and other property lines. That changes every time they get in and they move.
So do you have to do an inspection every time they move? If they move, you've got to go and inspect it again, or?
Well, yes and no. I mean, that's hypothetically yes, because they do change location and there's requirements for the clearances.
So what I'm hearing you say is the inspection would include designating an area they can park in.
Well,
and if they haven't been cleared there, then they're not cleared to.
Okay, that would be part of the guidelines that they would have to adhere to, and that would be kind of on them. But most of our inspection would require, or would pertain to their actual
Truck?
The cooking surface, the exhaust,
yes,
And space?
No.
Not really space, but
the fuel that they're
their
using.
appliances, their safety systems. They're actually will be required to have suppression systems in their kitchens in there.
Mr. Mayor, Tim, headline in the paper with a picture of a young 12-year-old boy with an accident at Fort Hall, jumping over a propane tank and causing oil or grease, I guess, to burn 45% of his body. I don't think we want that in Pocatello.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is new. Food trucks have been around for a long time. I would urge our fire department to see what other cities, municipalities have done and bring that to us. The sooner the better, because
Yeah, we want to be ahead of this.
we want to be ahead of the curve on this.
To address that point, Councilman, we have correspondence with the City of Meridian. Joe Borgiano is the fire marshal there, and he is developing a system whereby, because this is across the state, this is happening, and there's not really a fire department that has a concrete system just yet. I mean, it's in development essentially because of the newness of it.
Are you proposing, or those who are developing the new system, are they proposing different fees for food trucks as opposed to fixed restaurants? I mean, would it need to be different somehow?
Well, we actually don't have any fees to inspect restaurants.
Okay.
This is something
So that's all new.
It would be considered a operational permit in our language to operate a business that has life safety issues, or life safety that has those kind of properties. The restaurants in town, we just, under a normal fire inspection, they would be considered inspected, so we don't charge them for that. There's no business permits, so we don't have an operational permit for restaurants. This is just, it would be an operational permit to make sure that they are following the safety requirements.
So that's what would get into the fee structure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Heidi.
Well, I had a couple of questions. You said that the health department has been requesting inspections from the fire department, so it sounds like you've already gone and done some of these. So have you identified a lot of problems that need to be fixed? I mean, to the point of, you know, kids jumping over a propane tank and getting burned or something. I mean, are they problematic? Is this something we really have an issue with, or is it everything that you've looked at has been okay?
Well, some vendors are doing just fine with the NFPA requirements, and some aren't. You know,
Okay.
we've actually had discharge of suppression system in some of these. We've had oil leakage. Thank goodness we haven't had any kids jumping over the propane tanks. But you know what? I'd like to address this issue. Just it's coming. It's on the. You know, it's here, but it's going to get bigger and more prevalent.
Yeah, I had
Time
one
goes
other
on.
thought, which is just, I hate to see us do something that would potentially cause all of the food trucks to just shut down and say, hey, that's not worth it. I mean, because I think a lot of people really enjoy those varied
Well, I'm not in
options, you
favor
know?
of increased regulations
Yeah.
necessarily, but I am concerned about safety.
Safety, yeah.
And I'm concerned
No, I
about the
agree
time
too.
of our fire.
Yes, I agree with that. I just want to make sure that we're not going too far.
So I don't want to reinvent the wheel, so I want to jump back to what Council President Johnston just said. You focused on Idaho and Meridian starting to figure out what to do with that stuff, but the food truck frenzy is, I mean, we've got a TV show that's food trucks across the country. Somewhere in this country, there's got to be some regulations on food
Rochester,
trucks.
New York.
There are NFPA regulations that they follow at this time. Now, the introduction of the section in the 2018 Fire Code is going to be something just brand new, because they're starting to address this. It's getting to the point where it's not just NFPA stuff, it's International Fire Code. So the importance of it is shifting into a more comprehensive code, life safety code, because it is a growing trend. And now the International Fire Code is saying, look, we got to address this on a higher level than just the NFPA requirements.
So are you looking for guidance on what to put in a fee structure? Knowing that we've got to have the fee structure, I think it's got to be published and everything tomorrow. So you're looking for guidance, so you want us to pull numbers out of the sky and what to charge people?
I've presented numbers, $50 for the operational permit to do that, and that would include your inspection. And then if we are asked to go out and inspect a food vendor, like from the health department or whatnot, that'd be a $40 fee to do that for an inspection. And that's completely on the table and negotiable. I'm bringing that to your.
How does that compare to other places that, I mean, I know you said there aren't really any in Idaho, but like in Utah, or how does that compare? Well, like, where'd you come up with those numbers?
Just, we have other operational permits that are around the same cost as $50, and that's an annual permit that would.
Have you worked with the health department at all in getting these numbers, or?
No, I have not, no.
Seems like we need a little more information.
Roger?
So the fees are in line with what we charge otherwise, operational permit and stuff like that? Is that what you're telling?
Yeah,
So you're just saying bring this into line with what we're already doing in other areas? Is that what I'm hearing?
yeah, it would fall into our operational permit category that is currently in place, and it's pretty close to.
And really, it doesn't matter what somebody else is charging. It really matters what it costs us to do it. And so I'm okay with if we need to put it in our fee structure 40/50 initially, because it's operational, it's congruent with what we're doing in other places. If health department calls you out for the $40, I'm okay, because it's still congruent with what we're doing. I'm okay with both of those.
Kind of feeling like we need more information, but I mean, if that's where we come down, I'm okay with it too. What are your thoughts? Should I start at the other end? We started at you last time.
I have no problem commenting. If we have to get this in this year's fee structure, I would feel comfortable with that as a beginning point, the $40 and $50 we're talking about. If that's got to go in this year's fee structure, I'm in favor of it. But I think it's subject to review, and we need to get more information before we go beyond those initial fees.
Ask another question.
Yeah, absolutely.
How often would you potentially have to be going out when the health department calls you? I mean, is it like max one time per year, or could they be getting hit a lot?
Well, currently we have about, this is just an estimation, about 15 or so food vendors. You know, the tricky part is they come in from out of town, and you know, what do you do? It's like, that's why this is such an interesting topic, because they could be permitted in Boise and come over here for some festival. We don't want to charge them $50 for a permit to operate here, you know. So,
And so I could
we're
see
thinking
why-
about maybe
yeah.
a state, like if they get a permit from, say, us or Boise or Meridian, then that permit would be good for the whole state. But we would go inspect them, you know, when they set up shop. So it's
See, I would look at just the opposite of that. If they're coming from Boise and they're taking from our local people, I would say double it, not give it to them because they got a permit somewhere else. Personally, I mean, that sounds seriously. I mean,
But you're saying 50 your inspection, 40 if they come in and you have to do an inspection.
Yeah.
So they're getting a little bit of a break. They're just getting approved for where they are here.
yes, and
quadruple it. I don't care. Heidi has another.
Well, I had a thought on that. If I was a food truck owner in Pocatello, which I'm not, but if I was, and I knew that the truck could come in from out of town and they could just sneak in, and maybe before you even realized they were here, they were on the road, I would feel like that was a penalty to me, that I was here and I was like a target, that I had to keep paying these fees all the time where other people, you know what I mean? Like, I just worry that they would find that to be unfair.
I'm assuming that if we did a permit on the local people, they wouldn't or it would last at least a 12-month period. We wouldn't be charging them every 3 weeks because we go out there every other time they move.
And you're also not suggesting that the out-of-town trucks don't pay. I mean,
They get the
they pay
inspection.
somewhere,
But how are we
but just
gonna-
not duplicating
How are we
that.
going to
How do you know they're here?
know if they just show up one day and then they're gone the next day? I mean, how would we?
Food
would we do
trucks
that?
move all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know where they are today.
Like those mini donuts that are in the back of a horse trailer. They could be any place. I'm anxious to try
But I
them
mean,
out.
that's
I
true
wanna
with
see
any
what they've
food
done.
truck.
Just
How
don't
do
know where to
how do you
find
know
them.
I just don't know where to
All donuts now are horse
But that mobility is true whether they're from here or not from
Yeah.
here. I mean, you basically have to find where they are anyway, don't you?
yes, we find most of them around the 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock time period.
I'm feeling like
Where you see a
I don't
line.
have an issue necessarily with an inspection fee and stuff like that, but I feel like we need more information instead of go, oh, we've got to get this published tomorrow. I better get this in front of the council and let's throw a number out there. I'm feeling like it was kind of haphazardly thrown together that way, and I would feel better about doing it. I know we need something,
But
but
we're anticipating that we're going to approve the 2018 fire code, right? International Fire Code.
Yeah, if we
And it's
don't-
going to require some of this. And so to get ahead of what it requires, we need to set a baseline. We can always change, but we need to set a baseline that makes
Yes.
what we're doing accountable to
so are
that.
you suggesting we set a baseline and then have further discussion
Yeah,
about it? And we
fine.
can decide
Like Jim said,
to,
I think.
About enforcement.
Yeah,
we can
let's hit a
decide
40,
about
50,
enforcement or not?
Yeah.
Okay, if we can do that, then I feel a little bit more comfortable than throwing a number out there that we don't know.
Just doing a quick internet search. This is being discussed all across the country. Rochester, New York has stuff. Chicago has stuff. But in Indiana, state law bans fire departments from inspecting food trucks because they're considered vehicles. So this is obviously a wide topic that's going to need further development.
Well, and we've talked business licenses too. And that would come under that.
Right.
So, we might put this in right now and then decide we want business licenses, and the business license would incorporate this.
So I would be comfortable doing that, but having a discussion about enforcement and stuff, and when and how and all that stuff, if we have to have it in 2018 or 2020 budget. But I'm curious from our attorney's opinion, can you put a fee structure in and then decide not to charge that until we have adopted other things or until we have more information? Can we even do it legally? Is it defendable?
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Jared Johnson, City Attorney. Yeah, to that point, what can happen is the fee schedule goes together as we're coming to that time of the year. And it really doesn't mean anything until there's some ordinance or some regulation that supports the collection of those fees and the enforcement of those fees. So what you're getting is really a placeholder where if you adopt the 2018 International Fire Code that contains these provisions, the fee is already built into the schedule. So there's no legal harm in having that fee there. In fact, you can't do anything with that fee until you have some enforcement mechanism, and that would be by the ordinance.
Okay.
And if you don't, for some reason, adopt that ordinance, those fees just sit there almost dormant, and they can be reevaluated next year. But
Okay.
yeah, no problem there.
All right.
It's
Sounds
just-
good. Thank you.
We'd only charge the trucks that show up on the new concrete at the fire station.
That's right. That's right. Okay, thank you. So I'm okay with it personally if we have another step that we need to go through. So 40 and 50, is that what we're talking about?
Good. I'm fine with that.
Okay, 40 or 50.
Okay, I'm sure this will come back to the table, that's developing as we speak out there, so.
Well, we're just putting this in for, don't we have fees and,
Yeah,
it's all a public hearing too.
yeah, in August we'll have the public hearing on
So
them.
it's not like we're just doing it today.
Come back with a definitive proposal. Amounts, regulation,
Yeah.
inspection,
Yeah.
some solid stuff.
I think it's really important that we do this. We could be the leader. You could be the leader. While the chief's out of town, do what you want to do.
Do what you want to do. Chief's gonna come back to town and his head's gonna explode from this stuff,
Believe
so.
me, we have it.
Jim says that as president of the council since he does that when the mayor.
Yeah, I know, right? Okay. Sounds good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Andy, thank you very much. With that, we're going to go ahead and then move to agenda item number 7, which is we are going to adjourn the meeting from the work session, and we'll be prepared, or we'll start preparing for a budget meeting, and it will take 10-ish minutes.
Okay.